Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com and ArrowheadAddict.com, and today I am going to be breaking down all of the Kansas City Chiefs Day 3 draft picks and give their overall draft class a grade, a letter grade. I did not get a chance to talk about any other Day 3 prospects on my channel. I was able to host a live stream for Days 1 and 2 and react to their picks live. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I know there were a couple times where the stream didn't go that well. There were some audio issues, and I had to run in and out of the stream to do different things while also paying attention to the draft. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed my analysis. But now I wanted to give my take on the guys that the Chiefs drafted on Day 3, and then just look at the draft class as a whole and give it a letter grade. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So the Chiefs, with their first pick on Day 3, selected Fayetteville State cornerback Joshua Williams, who is 6'3", 197 pounds. He comes out of an HBCU. It's the first HBCU player drafted since 2020. And Williams is someone that I know was mocked to the Chiefs a lot by some other big Chiefs accounts and YouTubers. And it's for good reason. Now, the first thought that popped in my head whenever I saw this pick was Charvarius Ward replacement. This guy kind of gives off the vibe of, that bigger corner the Chiefs are trying to look for to make up for the loss of Charvarius Ward. But Williams, the exciting thing about him is he offers a lot more athletic upside than Charvarius Ward had. He still has pretty good length and size, but if you look at his RAS score, which, I refer to those a lot. I know they're not gospel. They don't mean everything, but they don't mean nothing. Williams scored a 9.41 out of 10 RAS. His 40-yard dash time was 4.5, so he's not a blazer by any means, but he still plays pretty fast, and he does have the athleticism to match up against NFL competition. And another indicator of that is his Senior Bowl film. If you go and look at his Senior Bowl film, he was able to play really well against the top competition from across the country. And also his press coverage is something to seriously watch. He's a very good press corner, which again, what the Chiefs are trying to replace and what they lost in Charvarius Ward, because Charvarius Ward was pretty good at playing up at the line of scrimmage. He wasn't afraid to get physical. Joshua Williams is a lot of the same way, but I think he has more upside. He's younger, and obviously he's not going to cost $14 million a year like Charvarius Ward now does. So I really like that pick. The next pick was in the 5th round, and that was Kentucky offensive tackle Darion Canard, probably one of the better picks of Day 3, a really great value. The Chiefs were able to trade up in the 5th round to get him. I believe they used one of their other 7th rounders to move up in the 5th round to go and get him. And you know what? I actually talked about him in one of my earlier mock drafts here on this channel as someone the Chiefs could bring in as a developmental tackle to come in and play maybe either tackle spot and even maybe some guard. I know a lot of people had Canard going in probably one of the top 3 rounds. I actually think he didn't fall that far. Personally, I saw him as like a 4th round prospect, maybe a fringe 3rd rounder. That said, though, he's a really good player, and I do think he can come in here and compete with Lucas Niang and Andrew Wiley for the right tackle spot almost immediately. He is an absolute road grader in the run game. Maybe has some work to do in pass protection and footwork. But, I trust this offensive line coaching staff to bring him in, this offensive coaching staff to bring him in and get him up to speed and let him work with this unit. But I think he has a very high ceiling despite not being a great athlete. I mean, Orlando Brown's not a great athlete either, but he's settled in really nicely at left tackle for the Chiefs. The room was kind of shaky with Niang and Wiley. I think they're a fine group, but if the Chiefs could find a good prospect in the later rounds to come in and compete with those guys, I always said I was all for it, and that's exactly what happened. That was the way the board fell. Darion Canard was there. I saw him personally go up against my Missouri Tigers last season, and he just really dominated up front, along with the rest of that Kentucky offensive line. Mark Stoops and that Kentucky program have recruited really well on both sides of the line of scrimmage, so I'm not all that surprised that they're starting to crank out some prospects on the lines. But yeah, I really like the Darion Canard pick. He's a big dude, 6'5", 345 pounds, and it sounds like he's pissed off about falling in the draft, and he's ready to come in here and work, and I'm excited for him. I think he can actually be a really good piece for this team. All right, and then with their next pick in the 7th round, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Washington State cornerback Jalen Watson. I never really actually got to watch any of Jalen Watson, but I had heard his name before, and I know he was an intriguing name for many fans and other draft analysts. I'm really excited about the pick too, though, because similar to Joshua Williams, he's bigger. He's 6'3", 204 pounds, and he also has a really good athletic profile. He scored a 9.21 out of 10 RAS score. Again, good size. He had an elite vertical and broad jump, so he's explosive. You're taking a flyer on a guy in the 7th round that has a good physical and athletic profile, and he's at a position of need. You can tell that the Chiefs are really trying to load up in their secondary in this draft, and I really like that because, to be honest, this secondary over the last several years hasn't been great. It's always been, average to a little bit above average, but it hasn't been great. And they've been able to do a good job finding guys here and there like Juan Thornhill, L'Jarius Sneed, signing Tyrann Mathieu a few years ago. But, they haven't been great. And I have a feeling that Veach is trying to make this secondary great again. You see that with the picks of Trent McDuffie, Brian Cook, Joshua Williams, now Jalen Watson, too. You add him into the fold, see what he can bring you. And Brett Veach has always done a good job on finding those late-round defensive back prospects. I'm very confident that Jalen Watson can make this roster and actually play some significant snaps at some point for the Chiefs. So I really like that pick too. No complaints about it. Good athletic and physical profile, like I said. And he was able to transfer up in college from a JUCO to Washington State, and even with the step up in competition, he still had a really nice year for the Cougars, so I like the pick. With their other 7th round pick, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Rutgers running back Isaiah Pacheco, and this might be my favorite pick of day 3 because this guy can run. I really like that the Chiefs took a running back to add to the room on day 3. Isaiah Pacheco is also a perfect back to pick up on day 3, and every year we're reminded how many great running backs are available later in the draft, or even UDFAs. There's a lot of good running backs that have been UDFAs that have worked their way up into this league. I think Brett Veach and the Chiefs learned from the Clyde Edwards-Helaire selection, and in that same class, there were probably better running backs selected after him, and even one of the best backs from that class who wasn't even drafted, that was James Robinson. And I think the Chiefs kind of learned from their mistake there. I knew they would probably select a running back in this draft, figured it would be on day 3, and I like the fact it was on day 3 because you don't really need to select one before day 3, even though there are some really exciting names every single year at running back. You don't need to draft one in the top 3 rounds. So Isaiah Pacheco, what I really like about him is he's got good speed. He's got about 4.4, 4.3 speed, but he also runs like a truck. He is looking to run you over. If you watch him play, he is just a force to be reckoned with. He's always forcing missed tackles, and he plays every down like it's his last down of football ever, and I really like that about him. I also really like his attitude, as well as most of the prospects the Chiefs drafted this year. I really like their attitude. I think that is actually something they factored in. The days of Anthony Hitchens and Tyrann Mathieu and guys like that, getting into it with the fans on Twitter, the Chiefs drafted guys that aren't about that stuff. And Isaiah Pacheco, I really like his attitude because he said that he's coming here looking to take a grown man's job, and that is putting guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire on notice. Isaiah Pacheco is looking to come take your job. He's explosive. He's young. He's athletic. He's ready to come in here and work, and I really like this pick on day 3, and I think he'll make the roster, and he has a chance to do some damage in year 1. He's a nice addition to this running back room. And then their last pick of the draft, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Marshall safety Nazeeh Johnson. Another guy I don't know much about, if I'm being completely honest. But they're taking another swing on a guy that has a good physical and athletic profile. He also scored very well in the RAS department. Definitely sounds like someone that could come in and maybe play some special teams and compete for a roster spot. Some of the other Chiefs late round draft picks from last year and their UDFAs could be given a run for their money by Johnson. So I'm looking at guys like DiCaprio Bootle, Cornell Powell. Johnson is someone, again, good upside, good athletic upside. Not sure if he makes the team or makes the team as a safety even. Could just be a special teams guy, but I like the fact that the Chiefs are taking a swing on someone with those kind of traits. So, yeah, that wraps up the Kansas City Chiefs draft class of 2022. Honestly, guys, I'll give you my grade in a second, but what I would like to say about this draft is I'm very, very happy with it, and I know it's early, but this is the best I've ever felt about a Brett Veach draft class. That could be because of the amount of picks they had and the fact that I didn't really dislike any of their picks, when in reality they've probably have had better draft class, or by the time things are said and done, this draft class won't be among Brett Veach's best. But I do really feel like that he drafted a lot of guys that can step in from day one and contribute, and that was a big concern of mine heading into this draft. How many holes is Brett Veach going to effectively fill in just this draft? I have a feeling that he did really well doing so. They addressed defensive line, cornerback, and wide receiver in their first 3 picks. That's exactly what I wanted them to do. They didn't do anything silly. I don't really consider any of their picks massive reaches. The only one you could maybe consider a reach is Brian Cook in the 2nd round, but that could just be because the Chiefs decided that, based on their evaluation, he deserved to be picked there, and if they waited until their next pick, he probably wouldn't have been available. And it's not like he's a bad player or anything. In fact, I really like him, and I also think that people are underestimating the impact of his selection, because it finally gives the Chiefs another good safety to throw into the room of Justin Reed and Juan Thornhill that can come in and be that third safety and upgrade over Dan Sorensen, and I really love that pick for those reasons. As you guys know, the only pick that I had somewhat of a problem with was the George Karloftis selection, because I think he's a little bit stiff, and I thought that he had a much lower ceiling than a lot of the pass rushers in this draft. But still, at the end of the day, he's an upgrade at defensive end. He's better than what the Chiefs had. He's going to be starting opposite of Frank Clark. The Chiefs had a lot of holes on this team heading into the draft, especially on defense. And honestly, I think they filled just about all of them in this draft. And not only did they fill them by simply bringing in bodies, but they brought in guys that I truly do think can contribute from day one. And their only true need on offense was a wide receiver. They filled that with Sky Moore, and I think Sky Moore is a fantastic receiver. I think he would have been a bad selection in the 1st round, but they got him in the 2nd round. He's perfect there. I always liked the prospect, though. I just didn't think he had superstar upside, therefore I didn't think he was worth a 1st-round selection. But he gives the team another quality target. I think gravy in this draft would have been any additional defensive line help or a good defensive tackle prospect. Kind of disappointed they didn't move up and try to take Perry and Winfrey from Oklahoma or something like that. Gravy probably would have also been a right tackle, but they got a right tackle in Darion Canard. So I love that part of the draft. The only bad thing, the only complaint I have about this draft is that they probably didn't do enough to address defensive line. The only addition they made was George Karloftis, the defensive end. I think they still need more. And you guys know that I talked about this defensive line a lot throughout the offseason and how Brett Veach talked about fixing it. Simply bringing in George Karloftis does not change much about this line from last year, especially considering that their line last year was Melvin Ingram, Chris Jones, Jerron Reed, and Frank Clark. To change that, they brought in Taylor Stallworth and they drafted George Karloftis. That's not a huge change from last year. I don't think the pass rush is fixed. However, I do think the Chiefs are still considering bringing in a veteran, and I do think that Melvin Ingram is probably still in their plans. If you can bring him in or bring him back into the fold, then this thing is set. Then I think you've done enough to the defensive line, at least for now, to have it be competent for next season, and you've upgraded the secondary enough to where, okay, you can survive the defensive line, maybe not undergoing the massive changes that it needed just this year. So with all that being said, I give this Kansas City Chiefs draft an A. Not quite an A+ because of the reasons that I just stated, but I give it an A. because you know what? I love everything that they did. I love that they filled just about every single hole in this roster. I mean, I like this draft. What can I say? I give it an A, and I cannot wait for this upcoming NFL season. I cannot wait for minicamp, OTAs, training camp, and then preseason. It cannot get here fast enough, but I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think of this Kansas City Chiefs draft? What grade would you give it? Do you disagree, agree with anything that I said? Let me know. All that being said, make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs fans can find this, and make sure you check out all my work on showmefootball.com and arrowheadaddict.com, and we'll see you all in the next one.